Resident Evil originally came out in 1996 and changed gaming a lot, making an entire new subgenre of horror, but this is based off the GOG port, the original PS1 version. So this version came out in 1997 and has various changes from the PS1 version that, granted, the English localized version of the PS1 version had several changes from the Japanese version. By the way, this version is more comparable to the original Japanese version, right in the changes made for the English version on PS1, where that version had stuff altered for the sake of making it more difficult so players wouldn't just rent it for a weekend, because localized be petty back then. I have played the remake Resident Evil 1, but I never played the originals for this video, and I'm not gonna make comparisons between the two, because I just wanna basically cover Resident Evil 1 on its own merit, not necessarily compare it to the stuff the remake does. Our main premise is that weird things have been going on around the Arklay mansions. So, Raccoon City ends up sending the Special Tactics and Rescue Squad, or STARS for short, in order to check things out. But when they do, mysterious monsters start attacking the squad members and they need to escape to a nearby mansion. And from then on, as two teenagers go outside, there's nothing left but to explore the mansion, figure out what's going on, and find an escape route since the place is now too dangerous for anyone to even be here. From the start, the player has a choice between the main character being either Jill Valentine or Chris Redfield, and there are many different gameplay changes for which character you pick, but the main narrative overall plays out the same, but the details will be drastically different. There are certain characters that each one has, such as Chris Redfield will meet Rebecca Chambers, while Jill doesn't, and Jill will have Barry with her, which Chris does not have, which I should find that one more weird. Early on, the characters find out that this place is filled with zombies. And we should find the characters know it's zombies and don't spend like a good while trying to figure out what's going on. They just know, okay, there are zombies here, we need to vacate this place immediately, try to find a way out. But depending on which character you're playing as, certain characters go missing, so I'm trying to find an exit. You're just trying to find out where the other characters go, considering they were just there in the main lobby, and now they're not. The tone of this game is made very abundant. The moment you just see the freaking character wall with the actors or everything, like, it's one of those things that's like, you can tell, one, there's a game from a different era, in all of the best ways possible. It's just one of those things that I can't even imagine, even Resident Evil nowadays, having like a roll call like this with all the actors. I mean, it would be cool to do it again. I can't imagine it, but I love it. I love this cheesy roll call. I also gotta note, the FMVs, while they were HD for their time, at least in this port, have not been upscaled or changed in any way, shape, or form. So, I don't know why, but they look extra crusty in this version of the game. I'm not sure it's just that's how they always looked. By the way, I don't care. They were HD for their time, even if some of their crustness can make certain texts hard to read because of the quality of the resolution of them. A lot of what happened in the mansion is told to you not just through the environmental detail, but also the notes that characters left behind in order to see first-hand accounts from people who lived here and the stuff happening, with Resident Evil generally being one of the first games to pretty much make that a whole entire thing using notes to tell the main narrative what happened. So that's mostly how you would cover the mystery on top of the further you go in. And with the fact that the notes are essentially being read by the characters because they do retain the information in the next follow-up cutscenes and stuff. So the characters are also reading the notes and keeping up with the information that the player is learning. Granted, the player could just skip the notes and not read them, but considering that's where most of the knowledge is going to come from, you should probably be reading the notes, please. When it comes to a narrative change between characters, it said Jill has Barry who helps her, with Barry being able to bail out Jill in certain situations in order to assist her. While when it comes to Rebecca, she's a professional chemist, so there's certain things that Chris needs her help with, considering the fact that Chris can't handle chemicals, and there's also a point where you need to solve a puzzle involving a piano, and Chris also cannot play the piano. So there's stuff like that where the character assists can also be helpful, but also the fact of what happens to these characters and what the player does also changes the ending, because the game has various endings. But the ending I got for Jill being one of the game's more bad endings, even if I think the reasoning for why I got it is incredibly stupid. But I got the best ending when I went through again as Chris. Overall, I do like the narrative of Resident Evil. And yeah, no, because all Resident Evil game, that means it has the freaking goofy delivery and a voice line to everything. But it's the fact that for the mystery it sets up and what you're uncovering, it just works, some of the clues you can see throughout the game in order to pretty much put things together yourself. On top of the fact, like I said, when it comes to the notes that you're uncovering, the characters themselves are also paying attention to them, so it's not as if they're caught off guard by certain revelations, because, we're gonna note, they pretty much already know, just like the player does, so they're more like, aha, I knew this, kind of thing, rather than being surprised by information they should already have. Like I said, there are various endings to stuff that you can do in the game in order to change the outcome that happens. Like I said, when it comes to Jill's playthrough, there's just one thing the player can miss easily that puts you into a bad ending that I just don't really like the fact that that's the deciding factor for a bad ending. In the case of Jill, where Chris has different circumstances in order to get a better ending. When it comes to the gameplay that I said, create an entire genre of horror for gaming, you have a third-person shooter with tank controls that, tank controls are fine. It was got a bad rep, and I believe that too when I was younger, but honestly, they're fine. You can adjust to them pretty fast and make things pretty well and everything. But everything here is designed to be more cumbersome and slow, with the fact that you go against zombies that are also slow. But that also means the way you aim and shoot the enemies also takes a bit, so to make sure that you're in the right position in order when you start taking out enemies, especially using stuff like, let's say, the knife. This is the GOG version, so there are some differences from the PS1 original. That's just the fact that the characters do move a bit faster, or the fact that you have the auto-aim that was removed from the worldwide version on PS1 and everything. Also the fact that in this version, where you have the loading screen transitions with the doors, you can just skip them in this version to really get to the area. Or the fact that when it comes to stuff like staircases, those animations actually play out 60 FPS because those animations were slow in the original, so I kind of want to get a move on and everything. So those animations will be faster, so don't be confused by why the stairs and everything only thing moving at 60 FPS in this whole entire game. The unique gameplay difference between characters is the fact that for this version of the game, the GOG port, Jill does not need ink ribbons in order to save in this version of the game. She can save as many times as she wants. She also, by default, also has the lockpick, which she can use to open several things that Chris, we don't find a small key for, in order to find extra goodies or certain doors for progressing that Chris would need a different key item in order to open. On top of the fact that Jill has more inventory space, but she also has less HP than Chris, so while she can do exploration better than Chris, she can't take as much of a hit as him, so you gotta be more careful. Like I said, the thing I found crazy is the fact that in this version, she has no ink ribbons. She can just save just freely, which I always found just weird. But if you beat the game as Jill and do a second playthrough, then Jill will need ink ribbons like Chris in order to save her game. When it comes to Barry helping Jill, Barry can save Jill from certain scenarios that Chris would be on his own in, including stuff that would just mean game over, you're dead, you're screwed scenarios. So, Jill overall is designed to be the easier of the characters to play as, especially with her lockpick, that allows her to explore better, even if she has less HP than Chris does. While Chris has higher HP, he has less inventory space, and he needs Rebecca's help for certain things, so some tasks may take longer as Chris, on top of the fact that there are some things that, let's say you screw up and Rebecca's not available, well then that means that a certain boss fight has just been made way more harder for you, since Chris can't do certain tasks himself. But honestly, even despite Chris' less inventory size and Rebecca's help more often, I didn't really have that much of an issue with Chris. Granted, like I said, in this version, Chris, from the get-go first playthrough, he needs ink ribbons in order to save, and in this version, the ink ribbons are more scattered around than being near save points, which people are generally used to from the PS1 version with near save point, but here you gotta keep a keen eye in order to find the ink ribbons, so Chris the more higher difficulty, but with the fact that he can take more hits, I honestly found it to where I could just not need healing on this person that often compared to Jill, who would end up dying faster than Chris. So there's just stuff like that where it's like, I didn't find Chris all that bad at all. Although Jill definitely has a better case of weaponry, but Chris does get good weapons himself, so Jenny found it fine playing as Chris. He was a more difficult option and everything. One of my issues with gameplay is honestly every boss fight in the game is kind of a joke. Like, it's more the fact that I get it, it's with a more slow stop-and-go gameplay, so you can't make the bosses too aggressive or anything, but honestly, when it comes to 50-50 bosses, it feels like they're pretty much just done in like 30 seconds, because you just come in like a shotgun or something, and they're gone. Hell, one boss fight came in with a magnum, and 3 shots, the boss was dead, and I'm like, I gotta put up magnum bullets. Everything is now deceased in front of me. Kind of thing. Like, the bigger threat are definitely the zombies you come across, or stuff like the freaking Cerberuses that start jumping after you, and yeah, if that doesn't gonna start the entire game. So definitely, exploring the mansion is more dangerous than the actual boss encounters in the game, even if certain boss encounters can be unexpected, since you don't know when there'll be a boss on the side of the room. So it's one of the entire aspect where they try to keep you tense and not know what to bring with you, because sometimes you may not know that on that side of the door, well, time for a boss fight, get in there. Although you can usually just walk back out the door and go to an item box and get your stuff, because they don't exactly lock you in the room with the boss completely and leave you completely screwed, which, interesting idea to put in as just like, you just walk in, see a boss, go, nope, walk out and go, I'll go do something else right now. I do like the fact that in the second half of the game, they do start changing things when it comes to enemies in order to make things more interesting to keep you on your toes, not wanting you to be too complacent, which honestly in this game, you can fall into because of the fact of, it's just funny, despite the fact that survival horror for video games, generally associated with the gotta be in the dark, gotta be looking for resources, gotta make decisions, everything. Resident Evil 1 gives you so much ammo to take out all the enemies. You can just pretty much start walking through the mansion without much even going on to stop you. On top of the fact that the mansion is just brightly lit. There are some rooms that are dark, purposely, so that way you can't get certain items and the key items in the room. But the fact that, with the way reputation that survival horror has become nowadays, it's just funny how this is one of the games to create that whole entire genre, and it feels like it's the complete opposite of how people generally talk about survival horror. It's one of those just fun things to notice going back and playing the original Resident Evil 1, seeing where certain things got the beginning, and how things have morphed since those beginnings, considering how people treat survival horror now compared to this early entry in the survival horror genre. One of the things I generally struggle with the other Resident Evil titles is figuring out where to go next, but for this playthrough of the game, I rarely ever have to look up a guide or to figure out what to do next, everything. So for the most part, it's just generally, hey, you still got a key? Keep looking around till you find where that key goes, you can't use it anymore. Or miss an item, well then go check around to see stuff you may have missed and not picked up, and stuff like that. So it's generally just a fact of basically brute forcing, double checking everything you've been through in order to get everything, or just pretty much solve the puzzles and get all the items, everything. Granted, there are some extra goodies that you don't have to get, but hey, there's some extra goodies you can get and do better on. So stuff like that. So it's one of those things where, because exploration, I don't know, for some reason this playthrough, I didn't find it all too bad to figure out where to go next. It was more the irritation of seeing where to go next, saying I missed something in my item box, and I go backtrack and where to go get it, or saying I missed something way early on, and need to travel back a good far bit in order to go get it. Overall, I enjoyed the original Resident Evil, because it's based on a GOG port, which on the PC version, it's not exactly the original version of the game, but the original version of the game had so many different versions on PlayStation 1 that honestly, who can say they really played the original version, especially who played the localized version on PS1, everything, I gotta get the point. So either way, I do enjoy the game. Granted, I know I'm playing a version where Jill doesn't need ink ribbons and stuff like that, or where Chris's ink ribbons are scattered all over the mansion, instead of being generally near the save points, everything on top of stuff like that, like little skip door transitions. But overall, I just enjoy this game and enjoy seeing how the idea of survival horror came about from this entry, and then really shifted into what it's become nowadays, where people think survival horror is just an enjoyable game and everything. It can be punishing, you don't save often, but honestly, I don't know, just found the difficulty to be just fine when it came to play as both characters. I did die several times, granted more often I didn't let the character die because I feel like I wasted too much resources and everything. And the second half of the game does throw a curveball or try to change things up, but when it comes to the weapons you have, no matter ammo you can find, you'll generally have enough to deal with anything that comes through, or there'll be some enemies that are just so small of a threat that you're like, I'll just leave that there, kind of thing. So there's just stuff like that you can make in the game, especially can make in gameplay. You also have the multiple endings. That does encourage replay value, especially if the game isn't that long. So about 4.5 hours to beat the game as Jill, and about 3 hours to beat the game as Chris, everything. And I know Chris more higher difficulty, but like I said, I don't know, him having higher health made it so going to the mansion felt more smoother to me compared to Jill with better exploration, everything, you know? So what's I said about Resident Evil, still a great game to this date and everything, and I'm glad that GOG brought it back, especially since they made an article saying that Capcom initially didn't think there was much reason to bring back original versions of these games because of the remake versions, even though Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes are completely different from the original versions. But that's what I said about it. Alrighty then, good day.